All right, welcome to the select board workshop on the budget. It is, what is today's date?
The third.
March 3rd, 2021. So, our task tonight is to, having reviewed the overall budget department by department with the budget committee, 3 prior meetings. Now the idea is for us to go through in more detail and come up with some hopefully consensus votes tonight. And then that budget will, those votes in that resulting budget would then be referred over to the budget committee for their work. So anything you want to add to that, Bill, or you want to just start us off?
No, I think that pretty much summarizes it. I guess the question would be, where does the board want to start? Do you want to start with administration and work through each one from the front of the book to the back?
I like the idea of working from the front of the book to the back. I know that's a different order than what we went through it in. However, it will make for a 30-minute time saving at the end of this, just due to not flipping back and forth.
Yeah, that's really true. I just wanted, before we start, do any of the board members want to make any, overall comments about where they sort of see the budget? Mark, you're always good for a comment like that. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, of course, never miss an opportunity. Medium Mike, the old chief down in Portland, we used to call him, same way. I got to tell you, I mean, I, for one, as the rest of you are, I'm sure, we're very conscientious about where we are in the grand scheme of today's environment. We have a budget that's been put before us that represents 6.3 or 4% over, and that includes over last year, and that includes using 300,000. I really am having a hard time with that. I don't mind using some of the UFB, or whatever it's called these days. I don't mind using some of that because it is taxpayers' money. I am conscientious about increasing that so that we can be better suited should really hard times fall upon us. I'm willing to utilize more of UFB, but I really would like to utilize it and have it at the end bring us below or at last year's number. For us to use 300 and still be 400,000 off, can't swallow it. I'll tell you up front. I mean, I don't mean to be a horse's ass, but that's the way I feel about it. Anyway, I'm done.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody else on the board want to make any general comments? And if I don't see you, because you're not all visible on one look here, then say something. Denise.
I think I want to be a good steward of the residents' money and not just have tax increases for the sake of tax increases. I guess as I was listening to the explanations and looking at the various categories of the budget, I was more or less persuaded that, some of this is investment we just need to start making in the town. So I don't know enough about the pros and cons of dipping more into the unfunded balance versus sticking at 300, and then what would be the impact of a $400,000 increase. But I thought it was a very, sort of good, thoughtful budget that's been laid out for us with important needs for the town built into it. So that's where I am.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, can I weigh in quickly?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we're looking at the right net increase in the budget. So Megan, if you could go back to the summary and put that on the screen, just so that we're all on the same page. So if you can enlarge that too, that would be great. So the net increase right now to the budget is 269,000 more than the current year. So I think that is, of course,
Okay.
using that 300,000 from undesignated, from unassigned fund balance. So I think it's important to, that we've got that number
Yes.
in our minds. So if you're looking at trying to come in even or less than, that's the number that you're looking at. But again, that's with using that 300,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I will say on the unassigned fund balance question, Megan went through and I went through the budgets today, the current year's budget. And, the audited number, we can use more from unassigned fund balance. The department heads, as I said in my introduction, did an incredible job, more than I could ask at the end of last fiscal year when the pandemic really hit us full force in March. So basically March through June, they did a fantastic job of cutting expenses or not spending anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. And so we are adding, it's an unaudited number, but it's around $380,000 that we're adding to the fund balance, what we currently have. So that's for last fiscal year.
Right.
Which is why I had recommended the 300,000 being able to use that, recognizing the fact that there are items in here, obviously, that are some capital items along those lines that are a lot of, I knew some new items that were brought up this year, and I'd sent out that list of the new items that were included in the capital plan. The other thing that Megan and I looked at was this year's budget and where we stand. And we have revenues that we've collected or will collect that are above and beyond what we had anticipated. Some of those are, for example, in the finance department for doing the check processing for all of the CARES Act money that was provided from the feds to the state, from the state to the Mid-Coast Economic Development District, and we were asked to process all of those checks. Well, the finance department did a fantastic job, and I don't know what the number is off my head. Megan can weigh in, but it's $50,000 plus in revenue that we didn't anticipate. So when you add
62,000.
60,000,
62.
62,000. So when you add that into other revenue that we're looking at, we're probably going to add, obviously not 380,000, but 150,000 to fund balance for this year. So, we're okay in fund, we're okay using some of that. Whether we want to use more than 300,000, I leave that up to the board, but I want you to have as much information as possible when you hear that. Keeping in mind that obviously going forward, I don't think of just one budget year either. I look ahead, and we don't want, we have to be mindful of the impact that that's going to have next year. So we won't have that money to spend necessarily next year from unassigned fund balance, or at least that much of it. Mm-hmm. So, whether you make some cuts in the expenses and bring down the net number, whether you increase a little bit on the unassigned fund balance, or other revenues like excise taxes, for instance, certainly up to the board.
And are we, let's see, in terms of real estate valuation, I mean, that goes in tandem with this in terms of whether any individual taxpayer will or won't have an increase in their taxes as a result of an increased budget.
Right. So if we anticipate a $6 million increase in valuation, that's a little over $90,000 in tax money, actual tax dollars that we would collect, everything else being equal. Mm-hmm. So, a new house is valued X, so that's additional tax money coming in. So that's approximately what that covers. It's about just a little over 90,000 in tax dollars.
And do we have a way of knowing what that increase in valuation?
Not at this point.
Mhm.
I mean, Carrie's saying 6 million, he thinks is a pretty good estimate at this point, but he's got a lot of work to do.
Okay. All right.
So, I know that, I think that Megan and Bill, weren't you doing a little bit more pencil sharpening on some things that the board might look at in terms of cuts in the budget?
Yeah, we did. I think it probably makes sense to, we'll mention those as we get to each department, I think.
Okay, that was going to be my question, if you wanted to handle those department by department or what. So,
I
okay,
think that's the best way to handle it.
Okay.
Otherwise we'll be jumping all over the place.
okay, let's do that then. Let's go ahead and start at the beginning.
So the administration budget, I'll just open it up to the board and what your comments are, or questions, or any areas that you're looking at in here.
Bill, can you just remind me, sorry, it's Michelle,
Sure.
on that miscellaneous professional services, was that the EMS study?
Yes.
Okay.
And we probably could reduce that number, so that it's $10,000 is for the EMS study. We're expecting that the study will cost approximately $20,000.
Okay.
If the goal is for us to divide that up based on how the EMS contract is calculated, if you will. So I don't have a final number on that. I'll have it Thursday, but that could probably be reduced by 5,000, because we're expecting that Lincolnville and Hope, as well as Camden, will share in that regionalization study, and even they might share in that as well.
And so then they would all pay a portion of that, is what you're saying.
Right.
So we wouldn't need the full 10.5. Okay.
So the number I put in there, it was 10,000, thinking that, it split even between Camden originally when I put the budget together. But I don't think that'll be the case. I think that it will be, I think 5,000 will cover it. I'll know, and maybe a little bit more, actually, probably closer to 6,000.
Okay.
But I'll know a lot more on Thursday, which doesn't help us a lot tonight. But
No, but why don't we put 5,000 in the board column at this point?
yeah, I'd feel more comfortable at 6, because I think that would cover
All
it.
right, 6.
Okay, anybody have anything else?
No, but sorry. Yes, on the fiber optics project, Deb, the 20,000. Do we think that will stay at the 20? I know there's a lot of other communities involved, but are we think that that's probably the right number there?
Yeah, I do think it's the right number, and Camden and Rockport have been, I mean, we're the two sort of founding members, and last year we put in the same amount, and this year we made a commitment to try to fund equally at that 20,000 figure. So, I think it is the proper number.
Okay.
And frankly, I'm hoping it's enough, but it's going to have to be enough from our standpoint. Anything else? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, we're off to the next one.
So that's the town manager's budget. In this one, because of the pandemic, I was not going to have, I didn't submit for an intern for this summer. So this money would fund the intern for the first 6 or 7 weeks next year. that would fall in the fiscal year. But, you know, that's something that probably can come out as well. I mean, I know it's only $3,360 and associated FICA or Medicare that goes with it. But, you know, if we're looking at trying to reduce the budget, we certainly could take that out.
I'm okay with this section as is. I mean, it was
I would think-
311 last year. You get 299 or almost 3, sorry, for this year. As a first run through, it might be an opportunity, but I think they're
Well,
big further on.
Well, that's what I guess I was thinking, Jeff, is that we should earmark it. We should earmark the ones that we're, you know, talking about eliminating or cutting. And then when we get to the end product, we can go back and sort of cherry pick which ones, you know, we want to put back in if we're in such a frame of mind.
And that's really the only one. I mean, we perhaps down under travel line 3105, because I don't, it's hard to judge at this point how much travel there'll be for training. So, I mean, that we could probably knock $1,500 off that and keep it at the $4,000 level as well.
Mhm.
But again, if you know, we can just mark it as a place to look to if we need to, or I mean, I'm pretty comfortable taking that down, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And who knows how.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agree, Mrs. Michelle.
So we'll put $4,000 in the fourth column.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Could you explain the contingency, please, again, 4450?
I'm looking at my paper copy too, Mark, so just give me a second.
No, that's fine. We had 10,000 last year. Apparently nothing had been spent. And we're asking for 10 again this year.
Yeah, what's coming out of that 10,000 this year is the EMS study, and we just haven't been billed for any of that yet. He basically was going to bill us at the end of the project, so that most of that will be spent this year. I don't have necessarily a project listed for that for this next fiscal year, but it's always to have some money in contingency because of the what ifs that come up that we don't necessarily plan for.
Well, if we don't have anything planned and the money that we have in there for this year will what did we say? It was $6,000 or $7,000 that we'll owe. I mean, I'd be willing to consider cutting it back from 10 to 5, and we can encumber anything that's left out of this year's and move it forward to next year.
Yeah, I don't remember what the EMS cost is for this year. You know, off the top of my head, I really don't. I mean, I know it's probably around 7, but it might be a little bit more. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, and all I'm saying is if there's a couple of thousand left,
Right.
we can encumber it, move it forward. And if we leave 5 instead of 10, we still have 7 to work with. I mean, we don't know what we're going to be having, but
Right.
you know, just looking at things for costs.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So we can flag that. Highlight that for potential reduction.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Not for my side. So the town clerk's budget, we actually had, Megan, do you have that email from Linda? She talked about adding $100 someplace for something, machine rental or, yeah, it must have been 3440. Apparently she just got information that the rental costs will be going up. So I know it's only $100, but it makes sense to budget it correctly for it.
So that-
3440 is what she asked for.
Yeah, so she wanted to put another $100 in there,
So 700 for the,
right? They're going,
So, whoops, sorry.
no, the state's going to different machines, I guess, or new machines for code tabulating.
She said they went out to bid for new machines.
Michelle?
Yes, just a question on the travel expense. So I know we have 1,500 in there. It looks like there's 1,000 for this year, which we haven't spent. And typically we only spend in the $200, $300 range. I mean, I know it's a small amount, but is there anything that's planned that we think will increase that to the 1,500?
The issue here is that the daily travel costs of the town clerk staff, they have not been submitting for that. So, you know, the trips to the post office, the trips to the cemeteries to look at different lots, things like that. If they have to go to the bank for whatever reason, all of that type of thing has never been budgeted appropriately for. So it's a reimbursement based on the mileage.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the extra money in there is for that purpose.
All right, so what you're saying is they weren't doing it the way it should have been done earlier, and you're budgeting for it to be done correctly.
Correct.
Bill, I have a question on excise tax motor vehicle. I flagged that one. Is there an upside, or is 900 the right number?
It's a tough one.
900,000.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Megan, do you have year-to-date collected on that?
Well, what I'm asking is what number, because this is the budget, what can we take to the bank that we have, you know, 90+% confidence in?
Right.
If we match the last 4 months of last year and add it to this year, we'd collect 922,000. But you also need to remember July and August include registrations that should have been done in the prior fiscal year.
for this last year. Yeah.
Right.
I
900
thought
is the right number.
I thought we were allowed to move that back into last year's bill.
We did do that. We basically what we did is we allocated the amount of money of excise tax collections up to what the budgeted number was. So that counts
So the,
in last fiscal year.
so the 119, 456 in July is a combination of both.
It is.
Why is that?
Well, just because there was no way for us to go back through and try to hand pick each one that may have been a June 30 or before June 30 registration. So for ease of staff time, basically, we took the budgeted number and said, we know we would collect this, and we'll count that as an accounts receivable in this year. And so then that wasn't reflected. But you have to keep in mind that because of the extension, I don't remember how long it was extended to for the registration deadlines, if you will. So some of those were done in July and August and September, frankly, as well.
So the 87 in the year before is more of an accurate depiction of what it might generate or should have generated.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think 900, like Jeff was saying, would be a push, considering this last month's was down 6 point so many percentage points.
What it was 922 with the estimate that Megan just showed, and I backed
Right.
30 out. I backed 30 out for the July issue and looked at the run rates for the other months and said 900 is probably the right budget number. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Bill, what about Are we done with that? I think so. What about the training? Could you go back up right there, training and education? So we had, did we have an increase in 988? Was that because of Wyatt coming on board, and where are we with the 1,500 there?
I'm not sure why it's not showing that we haven't spent anything, because we have had some trainings. I just don't know where they fall compared to what, what we have reported here. Obviously, a lot of the trainings are still by Zoom. So the jump may have been because of Wyatt when he came in, because he was going through the certification process as a town clerk certification.
Right, that's what I'm thinking, that 988 was the jump because of Wyatt, maybe. And then why do we all of a sudden have this much bigger jump to 1,500?
Well, the thought behind that, of course, was that we would have all three going to trainings versus, I think previous years, there was really only two that were going to trainings, or one even. But Megan, I think you could probably answer that better than I can, because I, again, wasn't here back before that.
To my knowledge, most of the trainings that they've gone to is just the annual convention and then other required trainings outside of that. And I'm not sure that all three of them ever went to anything together outside of the convention.
Seeing as how we're nickeling things, what the postage on yours, on Linda's, went up 2,000. Is that because of the newsletter?
Absentee
No.
ballot.
Absentee ballot.
All right. Well, where does the newsletter come out of?
That's in the manager's budget in the newsletter line.
I didn't see anything in the postage, but.
Yeah, we include it all in the newsletter line.
All right. All
So
right.
That covers everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, I had my ringer off, but I guess I didn't have my watch off. Okay, so are we comfortable with the 1,500 in the training and education, or I still don't feel that we
am. I am.
Are you? I mean, I know it's nickel and diming, but we are sort of nickel and diming here, so I still don't see that that's really.
Would you be more comfortable, Deb, at say 1,000?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it just appears to me that 1,000 covers it, but.
Well, if it does go over, it can be explained. I mean, he's not going to let it go over intentionally, but there is that discretion on the manager and the department head.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure I understood your point. It just seems like 1,000 is probably a more appropriate number, but.
Sounds good.
I could agree with 1,000.
And also this year, I mean, for at least the initial months of this year, there's not going to be anything other than Zoom.
Be Zoom, right?
Sounds good.
Put 1,000 in there and move on.
And then looking at the postage on absentee ballots, I mean, we'll only have one election this year, right?
Oh, there's always.
I guess we'll have November and June.
And June, there's always two. Yeah, we just
Yeah.
don't have, but the amount of people that were requesting absentee ballots was obviously amazing during the last election in November, but it was even that much more. It was shown in the previous ones as well. I guess it was July was the one this past year.
Do we really think it will take that much of a jump, to Denise's point? I mean, if we were 5,000 for this fiscal year.
Which would have included July, August, and November.
Right. Do we really think it will go up to 7,000?
Just keep in mind that this isn't just for absentee ballots. This is for everything, all of the mailings in the department.
Right, understood. But if we're at 4148.
Which I guess.
And that covered the absentees last year.
Right.
It was an all-time high.
Right. With a presidential election. So what would drive it to 7?
Well, again, we're counting on basically $2,000 is what we're saying would be the increase in the absentee ballot cost. The 4148 that I have is through December, which is half year. I don't have the breakdown as to what the absentee ballot postage was during those months. But if it's, if it's $2,000 for absentee ballots, the extras, then that's where you get the increase from 5,000 to 7,000.
I see. That's right, because we still have June
We
election.
still have the June election.
Oh, okay. Yep, I got it.
Her postage through the end of February is at 4,600.
Yeah, it's the June elections, you guys, we're not thinking of.
Yep, okay, got it.
Doing the same thing. Okay. All right. Anything else on this page? I think we're good.
That's good.
Feel free to make that bigger if you'd like.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
I really haven't identified anything in here that I would recommend that we reduce. I think Bob could make the comment, about the planning budget that over the 5 years that we show in our history here, that the expenses have gone from 201,000 to 216,000 proposed. So
I didn't have anything.
Can you just remind me that printing, the 4,000, was that because of
Plan.
comprehensive plan?
yes,
Yeah.
Okay. I had thought I wrote that down correctly. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, and this is actually an area where if we get it right, it's a great investment in the town's economic development future.
So can you tell us, I'm not trying to pick on training and education, but would you just tell us about training and education here? Why the jump?
well, it's not an increase from the current year.
Well, yes, of which we've only spent 40 and the prior years were 185. So that's a big difference from 185 to 1,500. We must have had a reason for doing 1,500 last year, I guess. I don't know what it was.
I'd have to look back, and I don't have last year's budget, my notes from that here. I mean, it probably could be reduced simply because we have, 2 contract employees in that budget, which we wouldn't necessarily pay for their training. But we would be having training for the administrative assistant when it comes to the department, and the code officer obviously has trainings that he'll have to attend, which will be, we hope, there'll be some trainings coming up for that are live, because he has certifications that he must keep for both LPI and for the code side.
History has not shown that it's been anywhere near 1,000. I mean, I'd be happy going back to 1,000.
Yeah, I could support that.
It's high, but it's fine.
I was just picking a number. I mean, you can go lower. I don't care. I just wanted to start a conversation about numbers.
Yeah, well, maybe we can go back and ask them to sort of put a little bit, not that it's that much money, but it all adds up. A little more detail as to why we came up with 1,500. Given the past history of 110, 132, 185.
So do we want to leave it at 1,000 until we hear differently?
Yeah, but I would like to flag it to hear differently.
Yep.
To justify it.
Can we
Wrote down
take,
a
oops, sorry.
1,000 column. I said I wrote down 1,000 in the board column.
Sorry,
Um,
Michelle, go
No,
ahead.
no, go, sorry. Can we also take a look at computer and office supplies? So I know it's not an increase over last year, but typically we're spending in the $1,500 range. I know back in 17, 18, we had a 2,000, but do we anticipate that we have new system we'll need to buy, or do we think there'll be an increase in office supplies?
We need to do something with a printer for that office. Our previous person in the position of planner really didn't do a lot with printing necessarily in the office, and I think that'll increase
Okay.
dramatically. So we've got to do something. The printer that's there is not really it's not
And-
designed for
Is
commercial.
that 3850 bill that you're addressing, or?
No, sorry, I was looking at 5405, computer and office supplies.
And a quality printer goes for what now, Bill?
You're talking $500 for a quality printer.
Yeah, not just saying you've got 1,000 left in there to be spent by the end of the year.
Yeah,
So, I guess maybe we might be able to buy the printer before the end of the year and maybe cut the line back a little bit instead of 2,500 for the next year.
I'm also
We-
thinking. Go
We
ahead.
have
Dave.
a contract for our printers that supplies the ink and any service for them. And that contract for this department alone is just over $2,000.
How long have we had that contract?
Since January of 2019.
We just looked at it, Megan and I did.
We sure did.
Well, I just wondering because it doesn't depict that $2,000 price in 18, 19, 19, 20.
So we got it in January of 2019, which would have been halfway through the fiscal year.
All right.
Okay.
Can we go back up to travel expenses again for a minute? If you look at the historical there, and again, we okayed the 1550 last year. I don't remember why. Only spent 185. Obviously, we're not doing a lot of traveling now, at least in the first 6 months of the year. Similar to the discussion we had on travel on one of the prior departments.
Yeah, I mean, that, again, you can certainly reduce that as well, I think. Keeping in mind that this is going to be it covers the whole department, so it covers the code as well. So I don't know how Scott puts his mileage in, Megan, if he does it every 6 months or something, or if he obviously doesn't do it monthly. I haven't seen it.
He does it about once a year. And usually in June.
And why didn't it show up in the previous year, I mean, there's only $71 it says it was expended there, which doesn't make sense.
I could look and see what he submitted for mileage for last year.
Yeah, it just seems like 1550. I don't know where it's coming from. It's other than it was last year's, but
Yeah, it seems like there could be a reduction there.
it does.
1250?
I would take it down to 1,000.
Okay. Going once.
Which line again? I'm sorry.
3105.
I would take it down to 1,000 and again, see if there's some reason that we're wrong. That's inadequate. Anything else?
Yes, just one more. Sorry, mapping. So we have mapping in at 1,500, which we've had. I've seen we've had it in the budget, but I've never seen any expense towards it.
Well, there was a big expense back in FY20, $6,500.
Oh, got it. Sorry, actual. Yep.
Yeah, and there was a $1,400 expense back in FY18.
Got it. Got it.
That might have had something to do with the UMO intern that was doing all of the culverts, roads, manhole covers, street lights. Don't know.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. I think we're on to the next one.
So that's finance. So there's a decrease.
Megan, did you have something to do right now? Little humor, sorry.
I have no comments on this section.
Neither do I.
No, I didn't have any either.
I'm good.
Okay,
That was easy, Megan.
Right?
Don't let it happen again.
I aim to please.
so assessing is up next for discussion.
Mhm.
Carrie will kill me if I say the one area that you could potentially reduce here would be where we in the professional services line 3060, where we're increasing that to have another half day of Caitlin's time from Camden.
So moved.
That wasn't a motion from me.
Well, you know how I feel about it. I mean, train our own people.
But I think that there's some increased valuations that are going to be done, right? Assessment valuations that are going to be done here.
That's going to be done starting next year.
Oh, next year. Okay.
Yeah, this was requested by Carrie. He requested another full day of Caitlin's time, and I cut it back to a half a day in the budget. So she would be there a day and a half. She's in Rockport for a day now, and he requested 2 days, and I cut it to a day and a half.
So let me ask you this, Bill. So far to date, we have spent 7,500, which would be 15,000 at the year's end, but 19 was budgeted.
The billing is delayed, Mark. You have to remember it goes through December, and then we won't get December's bill
Yeah.
until January. So
I don't mind giving a percentage over the 19,000 from last year, but I just can't
It's too
bring
much.
myself to go any higher.
I agree.
I agree.
I mean, don't you normally take whatever they get for a raise in their budget and give it to them when we pay them, Bill?
yeah, because we get billed, based on a day's worth of work for her. So I don't know what the percentage increase is, Megan, this year. Do you?
It was like another $600.
Let's just make it 20 grand round numbers. I mean, just in case. I mean, do I think it would be beneficial for Carrie to have the help? Yes. It irks me, because I know we were heading in another direction with a former employee, but I really would like to focus on giving our current people working for us more incentive to stay here, perhaps, and working on training them rather than paying our neighbors.
The number I was provided from Camden for a day's worth of Caitlin's time was $19,620.
Do I hear 19.7 from anybody?
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Other than that, I didn't have anything.
I'll just say that this is not where I would cut. I think that I think the Carrie needs the help, and this is not where I would cut. But I will go with the majority, but I just want to put a marker down there that I don't agree with it.
I'm sort of in between. Bill, you know the workload better than anybody on this call. Where are you at?
Well, like I said, I put it down to an extra half a day. So
I was a little confused on the number. If a half a day only results in a $1,500 difference.
$1,500 difference.
Well, I have 28.5, what you put it down for, and it was going to be 30.
Yeah, I'm sure I sharpened my pencil when I was doing the math. I'm pretty sure, or maybe my number is wrong in there.
I'm thinking it maybe should be somewhere between the 19.7 and the 30. mean, more of a,
Well,
Carrie's,
I think Carrie's
number,
number was off.
Carrie's number should have been 39,242 for 2
Mm.
full days.
Yep.
okay,
My
Ah,
number, I took the 19,000, multiplied it by 1.5,
okay.
to the 28,500.
so Carrie's is off and 1.5 really is the 28.5.
It's 28.5, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just couldn't make the $1,500 make any sense with,
Yeah, I just had to look at my notes.
yeah.
This is
That's
where we
what-
get our revenue from, you guys. And why would we want to, you know, in my, why would we want to nickel and dime this when,
listen, I get that, Deborah, but you know, I realize that our assessor is available 40 hours a week whenever we need him. But we do not have that person in our office 40 hours a week. He's available, but we don't have him. And so, you know, if you're going to go on that premise, if I'm going to go on that premise, maybe we should have him back 40 hours a week. The person that we're working with now is now a certified assessor, which could take care of Camden's assessing needs. And if they needed to help one another, they could. But I don't know, Bill, how many?
Well,
I
how
don't
much
want
is the workload increased? I guess that's, I mean, I guess I mean.
well,
that's a-
you mean how much does hours increase because we don't have somebody here 40 hours a week?
Well,
Or
yeah, because I'm not standing on principle about whether it's Camden or Rockport. I just feel like has the workload increased in that office such that we need Caitlin for double the time that we've used her before?
well, you
I
got
just think,
head who's saying it is, and you've got a manager, town manager, who's cutting back 1/2. But I think that between the two, clearly there is an indication that the workload has increased. And I know that I hear from Carrie that he is snowed under all the time, just in, you know, just in passing sort of comments. And I, you know, I don't know. I just, again, this is a department that brings us revenue.
but with whose work is he snowed under? That would be my question.
Well, again, one of the benefits of Caitlin too is that they, with the assistant assessor and with the assessor, they split up the tasks as well. So she will concentrate a lot on personal property taxes. And that there's a lot of work that goes into the personal property side of it. Not that there isn't on the real estate side, because there is in that as well. So there is more and more and more work that is being forced onto that office, whether it's, you know, different programs that come down from the state, whether it's different applications that come down from the state that have to be processed, if there are additional businesses to keep up with the personal property valuations, as well as the different exemption programs through the state for personal property, for example. I know that we would benefit from another day of the assistant's time. But because of the budget, I looked at it and said, well, let's look at a half a day. And then when I was talking with Carrie about it during review, I said, let's look at a half a day, and then we'll readdress it next year when we're doing the same thing.
Okay,
I support leaving it at what the manager recommended.
I do too. I don't have a better basis to understand where we need people.
Well, I can't. I mean, we have a lot ahead of us to go, and, you know, we can always come back and revisit this and add it to it. But we need to chew up a lot of ground between now and the end of the book. So,
Yeah, can we flag it? I mean, we don't necessarily need to change it on the form, but can we at least flag it to come back for discussion?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
Tag it in the event we need to do a round 2.
Okay. I'm good with that. Okay, is that it here? I think we're on to the. Are you already done? Yeah.
Yep, municipal building, town office. So, you know, in this one, down under the capital reserve, there's the $10,000, or sorry, $20,000 that I have in the manager's column for building improvements reserve. And if you recall, that's for replacing the heat pump that's in the Richardson room, that's not working correctly, and has been fixed multiple times. And then for a storage shed to expand our storage capability. You know, Megan and I talked about this today. We think that we could easily cut $10,000 out of that, and maybe not replace either not buy the shed or not replace the system in the Richardson room. It works occasionally.
You know, I'd replace the pump and hold off on the building.
Yeah, what would I'm sorry, the 10,000 would cover the what, Bill?
Well, yeah, we could, if we're gonna replace, the breakdown there is that the shed's about 13 and the heat pump in the Richardson room is about 7. So that makes up the 20.
I'd
So
put
you
that number, my vote is to put it at 7.
You're pretty sure on the 7, Bill?
Yes.
All right, 7 sounds good.
Yep.
We'll keep an eye out for an old storage shed we can.
That's right.
Well, there's another option, and that is to absolutely digitize and minimize everything that needs to be stored and do some serious housekeeping.
Well, and the other thing is too, should there be an opportunity for the new fire station to come along, perhaps the old meeting room underneath the fire station now could be utilized for some storage.
Underneath the West Rockport Fire Station?
No.
Oh.
The current fire station you have now across the street from you.
Yeah.
There's what used to be the meeting room for the select board.
Yes.
Was downstairs there, and there's ample room if the conditions are such that they won't get moldy.
Yeah, well, we currently use that for storage. That's one of our overflow spaces now. So
So I think we were good with 7.
Yep.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, that's the only thing that I've flagged.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Insurance. Not much we can do about this.
No, I have nothing on this page.
No, I don't-
Nothing. I'd like to pay less, but nothing.
Nothing.
General assistance. And
The only
again,
thing I had, Bill, was the utilizing more of our donations, perhaps, if that is possible.
well, it really isn't, because we get reimbursed for 70% from the state. So this factors in basically taking a 30% left. So we're covering all of the expenses that are in the gray shaded areas that we get reimbursed for. Those are all that. So those are all of the welfare items, if you will, the general assistance items.
I'm good then.
Okay, I think we can move on.
Yep.
So that brings us to the police department. And I have not flagged anything there.
The 7535 vehicle reserve, we're using 4,000. How much do we have in there?
No, we're putting a $4,000 deposit in. We're using $10,000 under the revenue.
All right, okay. And how much is in there in the revenue line?
You mean in the reserve account?
In the reserve, yeah, sorry.
That's all right. On page 153 of your book, you've got the replacement schedule that shows all of the information for several years out to FY27. So you can see the plan for replacements and the amount of money each year that's going into the account and then being used out of that account.
I was just trying to tap a little more out of that account if it's possible.
Well, I mean, if you do, then we have to make it up next year.
Well, I
That's-
mean,
that's
you know,
not
we've
fair.
talked about this too, as far as selling the car ourselves rather than trading it. And then you take that money and put it into your line instead of giving the car away to the dealer. So there is another way to fund that reserve if we chose to go that way.
Well, we will be doing, that is one of the things that we'll be doing, but it's hard to determine at this point. We've kept that cruiser for another year, so it's got, I think Randy said 100 and, I don't remember what he said for mileage. It's over 100,000. I want to say it was like 120,000 or something like that, he said. But we are looking at other outlets, not just trading it into the dealer.
Yeah, no, it works better for both them and us.
And so then if we, whatever we get, we'll go back into that reserve account. And then maybe we can adjust the account next year, depending on what it is that we get.
Now, are we still, I have where the hell is it here? Sorry. The overtime line. And one of the things that had irked me, and I asked it last year, and I will bring it to our collective board's attention this year, is that when even though we have a mutual aid agreement with our neighbors, if we have an open position, more often than not, if we can't fill it, it's filled by a Camden officer at the time and a half rate. And, I would like to think we could tighten up on that a little bit, and that perhaps, the one or two people that are working over there might be able to help out a little bit or we could tap into the sheriff's department rather than paying time and a half to somebody that's already got their time in Camden. Did anybody follow me on that?
Well, keep in mind that the overtime is offered to the Rockport officers first.
Well, I know that. I'm just saying it. And I said that if we don't have anybody available, then
Right.
it goes to Camden and we're paying overtime rates for them to come over and work for us. And I just think we need to be able to find a way so that we're not paying overtime when we have a mutual aid agreement that might allow someone to come over and take care of, 4 or 5 calls in a day's period or something. It sort of has irked me, but that's just me.
The overtime for Camden officers does not come out of the regular overtime line. It comes out of 3090, the miscellaneous contracts. So the overtime, line that you're talking about, is strictly overtime our officers are working.
Well, that should give us, any of the $5,339 that's been paid last year or to date, and then we're putting 4,000 more. I mean, there again,
That line also covers parking enforcement for the harbor.
which is another thing that you don't have to be a law enforcement person, and I realize that that's what your chief would like to have, but a civilian can be a parking enforcement ticket writer. So anyway, I'm done. Thanks.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. So fire department and emergency responses. The only thing that I've earmarked here is the radio reserve deposit. We did cut it out of this year. It was a $5,000 number. If you recall the discussion from last year, this is for when the county goes digital versus analog. We don't know when that's going to happen. We still haven't heard when it's going to happen. So I did put it back in there because we do need to start planning for that. But for this year, that's one that we probably could remove.
Sounds good, or at least earmark it.
Yeah, my guess is that, maybe the county's not any further along with it, so, but, maybe we should, can we find that out?
I think-
Go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say, didn't Randy talk about that a little bit either last year when we asked?
Yeah, it was last, and they hadn't moved any further, and I don't think that they have now.
No. I don't think they're any more well off monetarily ready for that than we are.
Right, and that's obvious by the county's budget too, because they haven't
Yeah.
Yeah.
discussed it yet, so.
Yeah, for all those reasons, I think, I agree.
I mean, we know it's gonna happen, but, we have to keep in mind that this is an unusual year yet again.
Right, and a lot of things were not moved forward, so to speak.
Right. Anything else?
I have nothing.
No,
So the West Rockport Fire Station, we had already reduced the number under the building design and engineering down to the 24,000 from the 40. So that was already included in the original, in the net budget increase that you saw at the beginning of the meeting. Any comments or? Okay. Other public safety services? So we had reduced also the fire protection hydrants down to 172 after getting that more accurate number from Maine Water. That was already reflected. The Northeast contract. Let me do some quick math. I mean, we could probably put that at 88,000 instead of the 89. Saves $1,000.
Okay,
sold.
And I think that's it for me on other public safety services.
Yep,
I had nothing else there.
me neither.
Okay. Animal control. Anything?
I had nothing.
Nope, nothing for me.
Nothing for me.
Good.
Okay. Harbor. So I think, did we correct that wage up there before? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the one thing here is the roof replacement on the Harbor Masters building. So that's line 3606. So we $15,000 in there to do that this next year. Can we hold off a year? Probably. But if we do, it definitely has to be done next year.
Well, the challenge will be is next year, you just don't know, and every year is a new year with a budget and the group of people that you're working with. And
Right.
I think you ought to put 15,000 in there under the board column for that one.
Yeah, I would say 15.
Or as a,
What was that, Denise?
was that for a reserve or to have the work done, but for 15, not 17?
Well, 17 is the line number, so 15 of that is for having the work, having the roof done. 2,000 is for other
Okay,
repairs and maintenance, including like the the annual service on the boiler and things like that. That all has to be done, just a routine stuff.
mhm.
So leave it at 17. Is that your continued recommendation?
Yeah, that would cover it. That would cover the 15
So,
routine.
so what's the miscellaneous repairs and maintenance? You've got 1,000 just a little further down. Uh, 3628.
That's for like repairs to the harbor wall when we get those those big hole washouts, or other things that have to be fixed that aren't part of the building or the floats.
Hey, Bill, just a couple of questions. So we have a couple of COVID things in here. We have 3008 at 2,000, and then we have 5416 for COVID supplies. And then we have cleaning service at 3,900, which is increasing because of COVID. So is there an opportunity to remove one of those?
I'm with you, Michelle. I was wondering the same thing.
I think we asked that during the presentation. I have some notes written that I can't read.
Yeah,
And I'm looking for my notes too, because we did talk about that.
let me look at that.
Yeah, I had
A lot-
that I thought that it was a little budgeted.
I got it. I can read my notes now. The line 3008 was for deep cleaning.
Well, how would that be different than cleaning services that we're increasing to 3,900?
The cleaning services are the daily cleaning of the restroom
Yes.
facilities and the office space, as well as picnic tabletops and all that other stuff. that gets
Okay.
sanitized. And then the deep cleaning is if we had an issue with, a case or an infection that we found out, then there's another level of cleaning that has to happen.
All right, so that takes care of one of them. Where's 5416, the 2,000?
Yeah, hang on, Mark, if we
Yeah.
could stay on that one for a second, please. Then didn't we decide that we didn't have a commensurate sort of figure for the town office? Or other locations?
Yeah, we don't.
So,
We have it in just a regular line. I mean, that's what we're looking at.
and, right,
I think that's because those are the only public restrooms we really have that people can drive to and
Right.
do their thing.
so wait a minute, so 3008 is for deep cleaning of restrooms if there's an outbreak problem? I mean, because the regular cleaning of restrooms is under 3006, right?
Correct.
I think we've got too much budgeted to there. That's just my
I think we do.
concern.
Yep,
Just to finish the discussion, so the 5416 COVID line is for the supplies, so you know,
Right.
gloves and sanitizer and wipes and that.
And I get that, and I can support that, and that's obviously new and different. I just think we've got too much in cleaning and potential cleaning and
so when we have the 3006 for 3,900, do we supply them with material to clean or do they do their own?
They provide their own.
So therefore, by us having extra cleaning material, I mean, wouldn't we, if we had a problem, call them to come in and
No, that
take
would,
care of it?
the 3006 is just a normal custodial janitorial services, and they provide their own cleaning supplies, basically.
Okay,
The 3008 line is for the deep cleaning services, where they come in with the special equipment.
and they would have their own material.
Yes, their own.
And so then it goes over to 5416. We're asking for supplies for something we won't be tackling.
No, that's not true. That's for having masks available, having hand sanitizer, having sanitizing wipes, all of that type of thing that goes into.
I'm sorry, I would just take out 3008 altogether. I'd take it down to 0, in my opinion.
Which one? 3008? Take it to 0?
That's what I would do.
Yeah, I would do.
Yeah, I agree.
Good.
I'm good with that. And I do think, I'm not going to profess to be a public health expert, but there's been a lot more discussion over the last couple months over now that we understand COVID, that the deep cleaning isn't something that schools or others need to be doing for COVID spread. And again, I'm not trying to tell us how to manage the COVID pandemic. I just throw that in to give us more comfort that the daily cleaning we'll have should do it.
If we could switch gears, I'd like us to go to the capital line and put the plug back in for camera system down in the harbor. And just let me get 15 seconds worth of stuff off my chest. We've been talking about this in the harbor committee for years, talking about it in the select board for years. There's probably $100,000 worth of tenders tied up down there, which have had issues. We've had the first of Andre's nose dislocated without knowledge of exactly what happened or when. We've had other issues down there, including vandalism, graffiti, stolen dinghies, etc. I just think it's a very uncovered part of the town that puts us at risk.
Jeff, what was the amount of that again? Was it 14,000? I'd written that down,
yeah.
but
I said 14,000, Bill. I think that's the number you presented.
Yeah, we're looking at about 14 to 15,000, and what that is, it's two separate systems, because obviously the harbor is very large. So it would be one system for basically the harbor master building side, and then another system over by the boat club side. You know, if you wanted to tackle this in 2 different years, we could do 7,500 one year and 7,500 the next year. You know, as a.
In addition, it would be good to monitor some of the events that we have down there for whatever needs to be done. I'd put 15 in there to cover both sides and get it done.
Which number again was that? Sorry.
Well, it's not in there, so.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to find.
Yep.
You know, and I don't disagree. I think there's a lot that could be deterred by having those things down there, as well as also having our website have that available so that people could see how nice the harbor is. I wouldn't disagree of earmarking it to potentially put it back at the end, or put that in at the end, but I couldn't go with it right now.
Another thing that happens down there, I understand, Mark. Another thing that happens down there is, right, wrong, or indifferent, boats roll in, tie up to the dock after 6 o'clock, and they're out of there in the morning. And that's lost revenue that could be recovered.
Because we'd send them a bill.
Do something.
I mean, I would say, so we don't lose sight of it, I would say to make note of it, see if there's opportunity with the other cuts that we are looking at to see if that's a potential. I mean, I don't disagree that, and frankly, I'm surprised that we don't have a security system down there, but apparently we don't. But I think it begs us to have that conversation if we could find it somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's Michelle and Mark are on the same page, and I agree.
Okay, anything else in the harbor?
Is
Other
the,
than a little bit of,
is the telephone part of the Wi-Fi that's done down there, the $2,000? I mean, I know Abby, if you go down, I always call her on the cell phone because that's seems to be how they prefer to be called. So.
well, just because she isn't always sitting in the office, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that just a landline for $2,000?
Megan, can you?
She's got a couple landlines down there and internet.
Okay.
Anything else? Just to let you know, the reductions that you've made at this point amount to about 31,000.
Right.
So,
Anything else?
yeah, I mean, I just, just being no, disregard. I'll bite my tongue. I'll go forward.
Okay, I think we can move on.
Okay, the public safety building. I have not identified anything in here that I would remove or reduce. Any questions or comments?
Not for me.
Okay, hearing none, we'll go to EMA, which is next. Emergency Management Agency. Not a lot here.
Going, gone.
On.
Public Works. I'm sure there'll be no discussion here, so we can just move on from this.
No money in this budget.
Can I did sort of have I mean, this goes back to GA and all the other stipends that we have. I mean, could you explain to me, Bill, and I'm sure it has been in the past, but I mean, for instance, your EMA director and your EMA your assistant and your GA person, they're all full-time people. Why don't we encompass the stipend into their regular salary until something changes?
You mean increase their regular salary with the stipend
Well,
amount?
I mean, I don't know. Do you have to, like the EMA director? I mean, I know we got to have one. I'm fine. But we also know that they're a salaried person. So why don't we just give them that extra $1,500 into their salary with an expectation based on whatever our requirements are, your requirements are, that they fulfill their duties?
I think it would make it's an awful lot easier from a payroll standpoint and from Megan and Bill's standpoint to move a stipend than it is to just pay, because that what you just described is a role in the organization and not a position, and it could move from person to person year over year.
Just going to say that, Jeff. I mean, if the EMA, we'll say the GA administrator, I think that's probably an easier one. We'll say, that individual says, I don't want to do this anymore. Then I've got to find somebody else, and then I'd have to move that money from one department to another department potentially. So
what was I thinking? I wasn't.
Well, it's an interesting question, just in terms of if someone is doing that work within their 40-hour-a-week job at the town office. I mean,
but they're not necessarily.
They're not. they have to be available all the time, like with the GA administration and everything. We had gone through that.
Yeah. And the
Oh,
EMAs, they-
okay. That was going to be my question to you, Denise. So why don't we just, isn't it just part of their job responsibility? But if they have to be outside of that, I get it.
this
Yeah,
is-
they're on call 24 hours a day, basically. When you're talking about GA, assistant GA, EMA, deputy EMA, they're on call. And that's part of what that stipend does, is it's reimbursing for that availability of being on call. If we have a GA client, for instance, at 1 o'clock in the morning that's been kicked out of a house or something, you know, they're going to have to take that application, handle that situation,
Mhm.
and go from there. So, and you know, EMA is the same way. I mean, those, they could be out at all hours.
Okay.
So Public Works, again, like I said, we can just skip over this and move on. So there was a question during the original discussion around the security alarm monitoring, which is line 4115, I believe.
Yep.
So the cost for that, we had built 3350 into the budget last year because we needed to do some upgrades to that system. So those have been done. So we can put that down to 1,000. The security alarm monitoring, so that saves $2,300.
Great.
I know the boiler amount is $25,000. It's a big number. We made a repair during this year to basically get us to a replacement. So I would definitely not want to take that out. We do have scheduled in here 2 vehicle purchases as part of our replacement schedule for trucks. So those are, you know, that encompasses a couple of 39,000, 31,000. What we've been looking at, when I say we, Mike and Megan and I have been looking at the financing for those vehicles and the length, the life expectancy of the vehicles. And so we've got the F550 is scheduled for a 4-year payment. We could probably stretch that to 5, and we could do 7 instead of 6 on the larger truck, which is the Freightliner. If we did that with those 2, we could save about $12,000 there. But it
Sorry.
it's lengthening the payment.
Mike called me late this afternoon and says that he's not really comfortable with the 550 going out 5 years, but he is okay with the Freightliner going out further.
Okay. So we'd save what, 7,000 instead of 12 off the Freightliner.
Correct.
So that would be 32,000 for line, or well, there's no line number, but.
That helps.
What was that, Deborah?
I said that helps.
Which line? I'm sorry.
Well, 7260 is the total of all of the lines that are in the gray shaded underneath that. Change the 39,000 to the 32,000 for the 2021 M2 Freightliner.
Okay.
So instead of a 6-year lease, that'll be a 7-year lease purchase, and then that'll change the number up above that. It'll reduce it by 7,000, the total, which Megan's working on the screen. She's managed to do it already.
She's good. Bill, I have a question on, what was it? Capital items on the pathways reserve.
Yes,
I know 33,000 was going towards the Route 1 project.
correct.
And then I had noted 10,000 for pathways. Could you just remind me what that 10,000 is for?
Yes, they had a meeting, the reps from Rockport had a meeting with me, and I don't know if Deborah and Denise were on that or not.
Yeah, I was there.
Okay. And so they're requesting basically to do the main DOT has a program where you apply for a grant to do a study around pathways, to do a comprehensive study. And so they actually requested $25,000 as a grant match. Because I think it's a 50-50, and Jeff, you can certainly.
Yeah,
weigh in more.
it was a 50-50 split.
And I put 10,000 in.
Okay.
Can it be cut? I mean, I'll let Jeff talk about that some more if he'd like.
Well, I mean, if it's cut, the amount of forward progress in amongst the pathways within Rockport kind of comes to a halt, because there are just so many projects that are in purely high level conceptual stages, and none of them are at an executable stage. This study and comp work would help get us to more executable.
Question. 3646, summer and winter maintenance sidewalks. The explanation says the additional 12,000 is for repair for sidewalks. Would that not be a better place for that 12,000, but in the 7615, where it says sidewalk construction?
Well, we're splitting hairs a little bit. I mean, it's repair work. So the 12,000 is basically for existing sidewalk repair. So, you know, obviously we have some repair work that needs to be done on the concrete sidewalks, especially.
Well, I don't want to see the summer winter maintenance chew up something, you know, are we contractually into that 23,000? That's a firm number?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question on the library intersection, 7607. Have we gotten everything we're getting from DOT as reimbursement on that?
Megan, I don't know if we've received it all yet or not.
We have not.
So
Yeah,
I was waiting for the work to be finished before I submitted the request.
What is that anticipated number?
It is,
73,370
well, the total is 110.
total between the 2 years. So it's on the revenue side if you see the state reimbursement line.
Right. So that should still come in this fiscal year.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Okay.
How does, where is it? You know, I realize that we need to do a lot of paving. And I know there's still stuff to be done from last year that needs to be done in the upcoming spring and summer. Does anybody have and I realize we just did a bond to play catch up. I get it. And we cut back last year because we went out for the bond. Does anybody have any heartburn about lowering it from 450 to 400? Just as
I'd like to see where we shake out with everything else before we do, because we made the estimates on road work in this town, and it's damn near $1 million a year.
Jeff, I was there with you. I know that, but this is a hard year. I'm just looking for little bits here and there.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing, Mark. My notes were to suggest lowering it by 50,000. So, I mean, it's still an increase of over 200. It's still an increase of 200,000, right? Because this reflects a increase of 250. So,
but I'm okay with it at 450, but it's like, we got to find, we got to take a little bit from everywhere.
Right.
But we know that the roads are going to be the last thing we're going to wag when we come up short in the end.
All right.
That every year.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's why we are where we are.
I'm thinking you leave it at 450, we get through the book, see where we are, and then we make the move.
Well,
That's just-
So,
flag it. Can we put a pink flag or whatever on it?
so what did we take the budget from after our adjustments going through it?
So
How much
far,
did we,
33.
how much did we lower it?
you're at about 33,000.
You know, and that's what amazes me. We have a, you know, $1.9 million budget and we come up with 33,000, but yet we worry about, you know, the harbor master's office having a new shingled roof for 17, you know, and it's just, it's the biggest one and it usually doesn't get hurt that much.
Well, but it's also, I mean, when you're looking at the road construction and paving, and you guys have said it, I mean, it's the easiest one to target because it's a big number.
Mhm.
The problem is you're gonna hurt yourself down the road.
And I'm talking about the overall budget, not just the paving. I mean, $1.9 million and we found 33,000. And that was just by extending our payments out on a couple of the trucks.
Well,
So-
we only found 7,000.
Only found 7,000
In this one.
off $1.9 million.
33
Yeah.
was total for the rest of it.
But see, that's where I'm going. I mean, it's just odd.
I think we all acknowledge the need for the, you know, the roads and so forth, you know, increase how much we are spending on the roads. We did have the infrastructure bond. We are increasing at 250,000. I mean, if you shave even $25,000 off, it's something significant to the overall effort while not hurting roads that much.
Agree, I can support that.
25 is good. I mean, it's something.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So do you want me to reduce it by 25,000 now?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, you know, if miraculously we come up and we find something else that really we can trim back, then maybe we can get back to that and add it back in or more. But, you know, let's go with the 25 less for the time being.
Anything else in Public Works?
Little side note, Bill, how many people do we have watching tonight? Do you know?
Megan has to answer that. She's watching.
8. I'm one of them, so 7.
And Bruce is one of them, so that's 6.
I was hoping there'd be more.
And they're probably budget committee members.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure they are. So sanitation. There's not much we can do here.
Good.
Fine.
Library. And I don't really have to tell you this, but you know, the gray areas, if we made any reductions there, that has to go back to the library committee and we'd have to reduce the revenue corresponding with it. So it's really the areas that aren't gray shaded.
So, and the biggest reduction, I think, is we're not paying the lease payment at the other building. All the numbers to reflect the maintenance of the building, have they been, and I hate to ask because I'm sure they have, but have they been carefully considered, considering the size of the new building versus the old building that we were in?
They have
Everything
been. Obviously, they're just estimates at this point, but I think the biggest issue there is the cleaning service. I mean, it's a much bigger building, so that
Yeah.
increase reflects that. But I think, you know what, we obviously will know a lot more as we've gone through a year being in that building, but there shouldn't be a lot of, everything else has been looked at. And
So I do have one under the contractual 4130 elevator maintenance. I know we have our certificate now, And that will run out in a year's time, which puts us at the middle to the latter end of our upcoming budget cycle. Shouldn't we have money in there for the inspection or whatever needs to be done?
I'm trying to think of this, of the cycle, Mark. Is
Yeah.
it? And it's
Well,
not a lot, it's not a lot of money.
No, I just want to make sure that we have money in there. I asked that before. I think it was last year or the year before, but it just didn't appear as if we have anything in there. And I think there were two things. I think one was there were two things that encompassed the larger number that we had in there in years past. And
In the elevator maintenance?
yeah, well, we have to pay for an inspection by the state and or something else. There are two things I think that, and they don't happen every year. One of them happens like every other year.
And I'm thinking that might be the case with the elevator, but I'm not
That-
sure.
That was for the Opera House, for the stair chair.
Oh,
And
right.
that's still an elevator guy though, right?
Yes,
mean,
but
right.
what you're talking about has to do with the Opera House.
Well, no, but I'm looking at the library under the elevator maintenance. Where are we going to be paying for that inspection in the upcoming year?
So the inspection would be, trying to remember when it was done. I mean, it definitely will be in the next upcoming year. But
Right,
again,
because it was just done so that we could use it.
right,
And it'll go for a year.
correct.
So, February or so of next year, it'll need to be done again in
But we're
this.
talking- Yeah, but we're talking $350. I mean, if we want to add $350, we
Hey.
can. Or we
It's a
can,
library, it's new, shiny.
or we can absorb it within another line.
If you can absorb it in another one, fine. I just wanted to make sure there was stuff in there for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Other than
$350.
that, I don't have anything.
If it was 6,000 or 7,000, we'd have an issue.
We do like on the Big Bang Theory, put some yellow tape across it.
Right?
An overall comment on the library budget, just pointing out some facts here. If we backed out the building and engineering architecture expense of nearly $40,000 in fiscal year 17 and 18, we would have been at $370,000 in expenditures. We were at 360 in 18, about the same number in 19. In fiscal year 2021, this current year, I mean, if you just doubled the number there, we would be at 380,000, and we've got a budget for 412. Do the trend line on it, it says a new library is expensive. That's
Yep.
The optics are, when people are going to look at this budget, aren't real good.
Well, but most of the building costs are paid by the endowment. So the taxpayers aren't paying that.
Yes, but they were in prior years too, correct?
Correct.
Right, but I mean, I think we're trying to protect our taxpayers and keep rates from going up for them. But that kind of an increase isn't adversely impacting the taxpayers.
It's not, what I'm saying is optics wise, it's not intuitively obvious to the casual observer. They see increasing expense associated with the library year over year. Or rather a big jump this coming year.
I'm not sure what you do about it.
And I really didn't have anything other than that elevator question. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's new and we need to take care of it.
And maybe we'll generate some programming revenue once we can have programming.
There you go. That's a good answer. Well, it helps.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on this one?
Conservation Commission,
I think so.
don't have anything here. Comments, anybody?
Not for me.
Okay, parks. So on this one, we did change, we added a description in line 5380. If you remember, the Parks and Beautification Committee wanted to earmark the $2,500 not for signs after they had submitted their budget, but for some benches, some additional benches. Not the same as the memorial benches, but you know, not that quality. But so we just changed the title of it from signs to signs and park benches. It's the same amount of money. That way it's there. One of the areas here that you could look at is under capital, the Walker Park Reserve Deposit. There's $12,000 in there, and that's to eventually replace the playground equipment.
How
So
much is
Denise-
how much is in the reserve now?
I think this is new, I think. I'm not sure.
Oh, is it?
I think.
Yeah, it doesn't have a line item.
Megan, we don't have any funding in there, do we?
We have some funds that I think so Walker Park playground equipment, there's 14,000. And that is from, my understanding is when the original equipment was put there, they received donations to put that equipment there. And this is money that was left over from that.
So we've got 14,000 that could be used towards equipment. When would we expect that we would need to replace that equipment? Any
Denise,
thoughts on that?
Denise, do you remember the conversation around that? I mean, it was,
I do. I mean, it's basically not an ADA compliant
Mm.
facility as is. So, you know, I think we have the merry-go-round, which, you know, I think doesn't meet a lot of it, is off at Rockport Steel getting refurbished.
For probably a lot of good reasons.
Yeah. So it's, you know, nobody's pressing to get it replaced this year. It's a big investment on the town's part, but there are some issues with what we currently have there. And I cannot remember whether Hanani gave us a time frame.
I don't either, Denise.
I'm thinking maybe like 3 to 5 years out, or, I mean,
and it was a big number. I mean, it wasn't like,
we're talking $60,000-$70,000
Right.
for the kind of playground, the ADA compliant playground equipment, the kind that lasts. I mean, that park gets used a lot.
Oh, it absolutely does, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there's an opportunity, you know, for not the 12, but, you know, because if we did, you know, even 6 or 8, that puts us at 20, but I love Walker Park. I'm not gonna fight on Walker Park.
Yeah.
I just bring it up just for conversation, so.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
no, it's a good point.
We go up to lime kilns,
Sure.
that 10,000 we mentioned once was an option to pull. I'm up for pulling all of it.
And remember, this is for maintenance, so this would be for the one of the existing structures that's on one of them.
Wasn't it to put a fence or a roof or something?
It's to re-roof it.
Yeah.
Yep, and to put a, I don't know what to call it. It's not really a fence, but it's just to keep people off from the top of it.
In the back there. That's the triple kiln, right?
Yeah.
The one over by the boat launch.
I mean, I'm up for leaving enough money to keep people off the top. But as we look for money, those lime kilns have been there for a long time.
And we have no idea what that would cost. That's just a number that was plugged in, Bill, or do you have something more definite?
No, that's about what it would cost for reshingling that roof, staining it, staining the the side walls, which includes renting a lift, obviously, to get up there and to do that.
So let me just throw this out there. When we put out the request for somebody to come down and do the Harbor Masters roof at that building, can we include this in it and make it a package deal?
Yeah, well,
Sweeten the pot.
Yeah, I would expect that we would do that.
Yeah, I mean, it might sweeten the pot, and we might be able to get a little bit less if there's a little bit more.
So what are we doing with this line?
What's the urgency on the roof? I mean, I'm asking that as a question, not a statement.
Well, it needs to be reshingled. It needs to be restained. I mean, if we go another year without it being reshingled and restained, then we've got more shingles blowing off and we have more water damage potential, not just to the structure of the roof, but also then the lime kiln as well.
And we have the other lime kiln that doesn't even have a roof on it.
Right, but we do have the funding to do that.
We do have the funding for the roof?
Yes.
Okay. In a reserve account?
Yeah.
Okay. So is that also going to happen? I mean, that is the plan to put the roof on that?
The plan is to construct that, yes, but we've been waiting because Legacy Rockport was addressing that, and then they had whether they were shifting or not, and they had the engineers come in and look at that. So we didn't want to build a roof on something if there was a plan to do something different.
Right, and they've confirmed that it's not shifting.
Right.
Yeah,
but they really haven't confirmed what the next step is either.
Still waiting on the report from the Stonemasons Guild on that, but yeah.
Which is why we moved the money into reserve last year,
Mm-hmm.
so that we wouldn't lose it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So are we keeping? Are we removing? What are we? Can we split the difference and reduce? Or you think if we're going to do it at all, it would take the full 10,000?
Yeah, that's what
I'm hearing from Bill.
Yeah, I think it's going to take the full 10,000 to do it right. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'd rather see taking 6,000 out of the Walker Park Playground Reserve.
That's what I was what I
Yeah.
was sort of thinking, and also, confirming what the situation is with the urgency of the playground equipment, as we were touching on.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd rather see.
I mean, I think the thing with the playground equipment is it is a $70,000 item, so it is a question of starting to put in reserves, because we're not going to probably ever have an appetite in a single year to do that.
Yeah, and I support that, and I understand that too. I mean, but if you're making tough decisions.
No,
Right.
I appreciate what you're saying, Bill, that we've got something in Harbor Park, which, is one of our showcase parks. The lime kilns are part of what we, many, many visitors come and look at those lime kilns.
Honestly, I'm almost of the mind of leaving both of them alone. I mean, feel pretty good about, sorry guys, but I feel pretty good about having reduced or come up with a chunk with 25,000 with the roads and all. And I guess I don't feel too compelled to reduce these two.
The challenge is for us going forward is how do you afford, this is a rhetorical question, but what's the best way to maintain the lime kilns? Is it through tax dollars or is it through foundation type work?
Well, I know Helen Shaw had mentioned, that she's got access to DAR grants for the lime kilns. I don't know if they cover something like this, but I guess that's a question, is would they cover re-roofing and staining?
Right. That's an excellent point. Helen's probably watching too. We might be able to, somebody might be able to chat with her.
Well, why don't we leave it in there for now and move on? We're going to get stuck.
Yeah, can we put it in pink? Can we flag it in pink for the purpose of making sure that we talk to Helen?
Okay. Opera House. And I know under the capital items, the building improvements, the $70,000 is a big number, but keep in mind that's offset by use of the reserve account. So there's no net effect on the budget there. Then there is the $25,000 deposit into the Opera House building reserve. We'll be using, obviously we've been with the AC replacement coming up and the stage lighting, we're using a big chunk of that reserve. So that's why I recommended the 25,000 to go back in. Could we reduce that potentially?
And I mean, Doug and I were big proponents when we first came on about keeping our infrastructure up. And I mean, that goes back to the lime kilns and, not so much as the Opera House, but I mean, the Opera House is a landmark that we need to keep care of. And as much as it pains me, I don't have anything to cut out of there. I think the sooner we get the curtains done and the lighting done and the AC done, then we can rid ourselves of some of these added expenses that we keep kicking down the road.
Where
Yeah.
are we? This is a side note a bit, but we had oftentimes talked about a Friends of the Opera House or Opera House Foundation. What do we need to do to make that go forward? That's just a short version.
Well, I'm looking at Denise as kind of the Opera House liaison.
Yeah, I'm thinking you've got to find the community members who are passionate about the Opera House.
So would that be the role of the Opera House Committee to try to help push that?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to offend anybody on the committee or any of that, but there's I haven't seen, there's a love for the Opera House. It's a tricky thing. But I think you're right. That it makes so much sense, and that's what a building like
Doug
needs.
had talked about that a couple of years ago when we were talking about replacing seats, upstairs and the balcony protection rail. That was talked about having a foundation then that you could get donations towards and tap into.
Well, we could certainly address it, talk about it at our next meeting to see who to talk about the idea and who some of the movers and shakers might be who would be interested in starting something like that up.
Maybe it's a crazy idea. Has anybody ever thought about asking Bay Chamber if they put an extra $1 or $2 on a ticket sale or something that goes toward the Opera House?
Yeah, that's a thought.
Yeah,
Isn't there an agreement with them, and when does that expire?
Like-
or the agreement.
For the use of the building by them. Isn't there an agreement with us for X amount of time for X amount of money?
We have budgeted in there, on the revenue side, Bay Chamber, $6,000 for revenue.
And do we have any sense on whether that is fair or could be raised?
I think it's one of those things that has to be looked at going forward. I mean, I know that when they, from my understanding, when a lot of the work was done on the Opera House in the previous years, that they received a better rate, if you will, for use of the Opera House because they had contributed to that work. So, but it is something that needs to be looked at. I mean, the Opera House building is the whole, well, for lack of a better term, department needs to be reviewed top to bottom.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's such a showcase venue for us, but it's, you know, setting the pandemic aside, it's still sort of underutilized even pre-pandemic, and there's seems to be so much possibility with.
And I think given an opportunity under normal circumstances, Drew would have that place rocking and rolling, but it's been just a bad bit of time.
I will say that we have had quite a few number of calls for rentals coming up. So that's been a good sign. He's actually said that he's received a lot more calls, you know, over the last month compared to, you know, the same month a year ago. There's been an increase. So what he's doing is, you know, and on my advice is instead of taking deposits that we may have to refund, and we're just doing a reservation with a TBD based on the pandemic, you know, when we can really open it up and have that happening. And he does have it rented out for some additional closed house rentals where, you know, they're coming in and doing some performances and recording them and things like that. So that's a good thing. We're getting a little bit of rent. Yeah, but it needs to be reviewed top to bottom, the whole thing. But part of that too is, you know, we upgrade the stage lighting so that we can potentially get more revenue because you have different groups that are willing to come in and use it then. A lot of the groups, according to Drew, that have rented it in the past, they bring in their own lighting because the lighting that we have, you know, just is so archaic. So that.
Yeah, I'm okay with the way it is, Bill. You know, we
Okay.
need to fix it. We need to be able to market it so that people will come to it. And it's a tough pill to swallow, but it is a great piece of infrastructure that we need to keep up.
And it's right for an Opera House foundation.
Yeah.
Yep.
It really is.
Okay, moving on. Recreation. So the only place here that I think that you could potentially do anything would be under the Parks and Rec Reserve. If you remember during the discussion, this is to start funding for ball field fencing replacement and the tennis court rehab. I cut it from what Mike had put in. Really, what we should have is $11,000 a year for the tennis courts for, I think, like 10 years and $20,000 per year for the fencing for 10 or 11 years. So we're looking at, you know, it's 10 or 11 years out for doing this type of thing. I reduced it down to 15,000 just because, again, looking at the overall budget.
So I'm just, again, I'm going back 3 or 4 years there, Bill. It seems to me there was a number that was given us for fixing the surface of the tennis court. And that was prior to you getting there. And it seems to me we had been putting money away. Do we have anything in a reserve line for that now?
Megan will have to look that up while we're talking about it.
Yeah, that rings a bell with me.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, and it was during a Rick time, and it might have been like my second year overall, Deb's first year, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think so.
We did resurface the tennis courts, and when we did that, we were told that we would get about 10 years out of that. This recreation reserve that's got 46,000 in it can be used for anything at RES or March Jones, which includes fencing, tennis courts. We used money out of this to do the resurfacing. We've used money out of this to fix one of the backstops.
And so if the tennis court has been resurfaced, our only concern now is the fencing. Is that right, Bill?
Well, again, if it was done 4 or 5 years ago, then it's going to need to be done again in 4 or 5 years. So, but the fencing throughout March Jones, if you've looked at it, you know, it's lifting, it's leaning. We did have to do a repair to one of the backstops on one of the fields because it was in such bad condition.
Do we have any? Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, did you say when it was resurfaced, Megan? The tennis courts?
It was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was since I had been on the board.
Yeah, it was right somewhere in the transition from Steve running things to Mike running things. It was right there.
Yeah.
So my question. Oh, go. Sorry.
I was just saying I didn't think it was quite that long ago, but.
So the question I have, do we have any idea what the fencing is going to cost to get it? I mean, if some of the posts just need to be straightened up, or, you know, what is a cost, do we know, to make it right?
The problem with the fencing is that, you know, a lot of the posts, especially in the backstops, are set in concrete. So you can't simply just reset the posts. You know, you have to dig down, replace the concrete, all that sort of thing. A lot of times the actual fencing itself has to be replaced because it curls up and it gets bent, you know, over the years with kids leaning against it or adults leaning against it, that type of thing. So a replacement, the cost for replacement that we got was $220,000 for all that fencing.
Yeah, sorry. When you said fencing, I was thinking sort of backstops different than fencing.
Yeah. No, this is total package. So, I mean, if you're looking at a backstop for replacing a backstop because of the height of those and their cement, those posts are cemented in, you're talking $20,000 for a backstop for replacing it. We've done a repair, which didn't cost us $20,000, but we did a repair that was maybe, I think it was $4,000 or $5,000. I mean, it wasn't, but it was still bad enough. It's one of those things that's not going to go away. That's the problem. And it gets to the point where it becomes unsafe to play. And, you know, I mean, I'm a proponent of putting money aside. At the same time, I also understand, you know, the budget year that we're looking at too. So, which is why I agree from the 31.
So, you know, I'm trying to form this in a way that, I mean, so we have 43,000 currently in the reserve, Megan, is that right?
Yeah, it was about that, 46, I think.
And we're asking for 15. So that roughly gives us $60,000. Can we, I mean, because if we keep working towards that $200,000 number, I mean, it's going to be 225 or 30 by the time we ever get to it. Can sure. if we give you that 15 in the budget, can we at least perhaps get $50,000 worth of work done in the upcoming year, so that we, you know, next year we can add a little bit more, and then, you know, in 2 years' time we can do another $50,000 worth of work. I just hate to keep working a way to get to 200,000 and then be told it's 225 or 50.
Yeah, I don't know if, I'd have to look, I didn't do a review of the fence myself. I mean, I'm going on Mike's review of it and the fence guy that he contacted. So I'd have to look to see if there were sections of the fencing, but you know,
Yeah,
you
no.
can, but you
Yeah.
can do that, you know, as we're going forward. We can start replacing sections and doing it a little bit at a time.
I would much rather do that as best we can going year to year than trying to get to that magic number, whatever that is.
Yeah. No, I
and have
understand that.
deteriorate even further.
Yeah, I understand that.
So I guess I'm okay with the 15 if we can sort of move forward with doing things in the upcoming year with what we have in the reserve.
And that's when, you know, the repair that we did with one of the backstops, we felt that that could get us, you know, another 6 or 7 years, you know, with that particular backstop.
Yeah.
Without having to replace it. So any other comments on recreation?
I don't know. You know, we obviously can't do all things for all departments and everything here. It just makes me wonder if we should be reducing that to 10,000. And you know, I keep thinking about the harbor cameras, and you know, so there you're talking about 14 or 15,000 that we would maybe be adding. You know, can this go down to 10,000, and that's 5,000 that goes toward the cameras? I mean, which we have to make some tough decisions. Ones to do more.
And I'm good with 10. I mean,
Yeah, no, okay, yeah. And,
no.
and it also goes to the 6,000, you know, when you're talking about 6,000 for the equipment, the playground equipment, I get it. We need playground equipment, at least if we were putting 6,000 in, then maybe we have another 6,000 that can go toward the camera. So now you're up to 11,000 for the camera. So I don't know. We just have to make some, you know, we got to juggle some of these things.
I would be comfortable with 10 there. I mean, especially since we do have a fairly good reserve that we could start doing some work with.
I mean, if we have 56,000 in there after the
Right.
10, and we can do 50 of it, we've got 6 seed money to, you know, for the next 2 years, then we can do something else.
Yep,
Yep.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So up next is debt service, which we really can't do anything with,
We only wish we could.
right? And keep in mind that, you know, the infrastructure bond payment here this is the first year for that. So that's $170,000, $163,000 in principal. So when you're looking at your overall number, you know, 163,000 is a principal payment on that. That's new this year.
Yeah.
So it's important. It's just important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think, didn't you say the total was 178, right?
Yeah, with the interest payment.
Yeah.
P&I.
The cost of not properly funding our roads and other work from prior years, it's just got up to us.
Doing
Yep.
so better now.
Yep.
I'm gonna skip over county because we can't do anything about that. And go to cemeteries.
80901.
So in the cemeteries, I'm looking at obviously the capital items 75, 71, the reserve account for the columbarium. Probably get shot, but I will recommend that we eliminate that. And the reason for that is that I'm very confident that we can borrow from the trust funds, that the investment committee will get behind that. We just need to put together a plan. I'm waiting for the cemetery committee to put together a plan so that we can present to them, you know, a repayment schedule, what size the columbarium is going to be, what the rates will be for selling those units. I also think the cemetery committee, and I talked with Linda earlier today about this, that they need to look at the expense, the fees that we're charging currently for cemetery plots and for perpetual care. I think as things increase, we need to increase those costs. So I think we can eliminate that. We do have, was it 45,000, Megan?
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds about right.
Yeah, in
I-
reserve for the columbarium.
Yeah,
So
43, I think there was 13 donation. I think we had 30,000 in there.
It's 44.
Yep.
44, yeah.
So, 44,000, I think we're looking at 75 to 100,000. So if we had 50,000 from the investment, from the investment committee, then as long as we can put together a good plan for them to show them that we're going to spend X amount of money, but we're going to sell those, and part of that money will go back to repaying the trust fund.
Mhm.
I think it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and I mean, we can, and I did speak to Linda about that too. And I mean, we could start marketing, I don't know how you market it, but I mean, you could start marketing this to people and they could be buying into it.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm good with eliminating it. And I think you
I am
can
too.
go with the investment guys.
I am too. Well, people buy plots all the time in advance too, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
this is no different.
Yeah, as the liaison to the cemetery committee, we've met once in the entire time I've been on the select board. So it would be good if we're going to meet and do some good things for the town.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just difficult during the pandemic because the members of that committee don't have the technology to be able to meet by Zoom. So I talked with Linda about that a little bit today too. And hopefully, over the next couple of months, as things get improved, then we can have an in-person meeting, spaced apart.
Okay. We can meet at a cemetery outside.
Right. Bring your rake and we can save some more money.
That's right. Lawnmowers, everything.
Yeah, but that goes to your point, Bill. I mean, when, there's probably somebody in these cemeteries that paid $50 for their lot.
Right.
And I mean, lawn mowing and everything goes up every year.
Absolutely.
So we should look at some minor adjustments going forward.
Well, it's just a matter of looking at what other towns are charging for the cemetery lots and seeing
Yep.
where we stand with it. And then, but also looking at our expenses. We don't have to go in line with other towns.
No, but it ought to be reviewed.
Yeah, it does. So let's go to the schools and we can cut that in half probably. Special assessments. Again, not a lot we can do there. One thing that I'll bring up, which Megan and Carrie and I have been working on, as we talked about with the taxations of timeshares ordinance, which we're trying to implement. It looks like we'll probably end up getting some revenue from the Samoset for us to continue doing what we're doing now with sending out the tax bills. But they're going to pay us to do that instead of them having to change their systems completely to do that and potentially adding staff. So, I mean, we could put a little bit of money. I don't know if we would put it necessarily in this line or if we put it in the finance line or where we would put it. Megan, if you've got some advice on that, I'd appreciate it.
Probably be easier to just put it here with a tax billing instead of splitting it up amongst 3 or 4 different departments.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter at the end of the day,
Right.
it's all going to go into the same pot. So we have not, we figured out what our expense is approximately, but we haven't followed up and met with the Samoset yet because Megan has just finished that up and I just reviewed it. So, I mean, I'd be comfortable putting, say $7,500 maybe as a new revenue line.
Okay.
Which would allow us to obviously decreases the budget by that.
The harbor cameras are starting to.
It's starting to look better.
Bill, any further thoughts on the revenue sharing line, the 308? Any news since last week?
I don't have any new news. on that. I can look real quick to see if anything's been released that I haven't seen.
Alright. But
Um,
do we believe that's upside potential?
More than that, it's potential. There is potential there
But
based on,
likely, unlikely,
sorry.
likely or unlikely? Or
No, I think it's, I mean, looking at the state's revenue numbers that have been coming in, I think it's probably likely that it's going to be more than that. But I have no information, and there's nothing new from the state. I'm just looking now.
so we'll leave it alone, but possible upside.
Yeah, there is possible upside there. And I wish I could say, yeah, it's going to be another 20,000, but you know, at this point, I can't say with any certainty. And they usually don't release their updated projections for next fiscal year until April. And it's been all over the place with the pandemic. So do we want to go back to where we were with the special assessments because of the unassigned fund balance? I don't know if you wanted to have a discussion around that at this point, or if you wanted to look at this number, the net number first.
I'd be curious to find out where we are. You know, I know, what'd you say, it was 269 that we were over, and that's using the 300. How much of that 269 did we cut into?
100,000.
So we still have 169.
Right.
You know, I mean, we're still going to get a lot of things done in here. I mean, a lot of things that need to be done.
And if we get the extra 90,000, you know, if Carrie's estimate of the increased valuation of 6 million equals 90,000 additional tax revenues, I don't want to, can't take that to the bank yet, but just as a factor as we consider that. 9.
Is there another contingent area too that,
Yeah, I'm not talking,
well, yeah, it's they would more than make up for that.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I mean, I know everybody here knows it. We need the things that are in here wouldn't be in here if they weren't needed. And I think, but we need to do the best we can to bring it back to what it was last year by hook or by crook, using whatever means that we either currently have or might have. And that's just my 2 cents worth. I'm not going to argue over a lot, but I really think we should do our best to bring it back to at least what it was last year. I mean, and we're still getting stuff done.
What was the 2021 budget before we walked into COVID and you revised it by a few $100,000, Bill?
Well, the net reduction, because we reduced revenues too, keep in mind. So the net reduction was about 78,000, 79,000.
All right, but what was the, what was the expenditure? Trying to think, how much did we shave off expenses?
Oh, yeah, I've got that number.
We got 6.2 after you did your haircut.
So we cut expenses by 235,000, and we reduced revenue projections by 159,000.
Expenses by 235, you said? I'm sorry.
Yes.
These here are the original numbers before the COVID adjustment.
This one right here.
Well, sorry. These ones.
There we go.
So for last fiscal year, we approved 6.4. And where are we this year? Well, we had originally thought we were gonna do 6.4.
Oh.
And we're currently at 6.7.
Yeah.
6.8.
And that's using your 300,000 now.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We're at the 6.4, 6.2 range. We're at 6.8. Use 300,000, add the 169 to it.
I'm not following it. I'm not following everything you're saying, Jeff.
Yeah, I know. That's okay.
I'm sort of with you.
Last year, we went into the calendar year
Yeah,
thinking we were going to have a $6.4 million expense budget for this current fiscal year. Bill and his team pulled a couple $100,000 out of that, so that the budget was at 6.2 in expenses. I'm just
Okay.
looking at the expenditure line.
okay,
We are now currently sitting at 6.8 on expenditures, right?
yep,
Okay, so that's a difference of 400,000 from where we were last year, and 600,000 from where we actually landed on the budget. We used 300,000 to help with this, and well, anyway, I'm getting tangled up. But our expenses shown here have jumped 600,000 year over year.
If you look at the net total budget, the original approved net budget was 4.204. This net budget is 4.297.
That's that 269,000 you're talking about.
And a significant part of the difference comes from road paving, right? I mean, weren't
Yes,
we down to like 100,000?
Well, yeah, if you look, I mean, number one, you've got the infrastructure bond payment, so there's 178,000. But in addition to that, you've got another, what do we settle on, 425? So there's $225,000 extra in road paving.
And I think didn't we even go down to as low as 100 on road paving last?
No, we went to 200 from a 300,000.
300, okay.
Yeah, so we did cut 100,000 from that.
Yeah.
so are we still, we're still trying to make up the 169 though, right? Isn't that right, the right number that we're trying to make up?
If you want to be the same,
Correct. And we have, as confirmed, we have another 243,000 in anticipated revenue.
well,
Rather
keeping in
than,
mind-
rather
Go
than
ahead,
talk,
No, that's,
I would rather temporarily use out of UFB and then perhaps replace it when the time is right. Does that make any sense without giving too much away?
Is there a is there a downside to doing it that way? I don't.
that's how it'll end up happening anyway. I mean, you know, unless,
right.
because we're going to have some unanticipated revenue in this year, this fiscal year, and then we'll have some unanticipated revenue in next fiscal year.
So that from this year's will go into UFB anyway.
Right.
But anyway, my point being that I think we've made up the 169.
Right.
That's all we
Right.
need to say,
Yeah.
really.
I mean, I guess I would say take whatever additional is needed to make us flush with last year in the anticipation of a replacement into UFB. And that will make my head quit pounding.
Well, and just to throw a monkey wrench into that, Mark, so to bring up what Denise had said, I think Denise had said, you know, with a $6 million increase in value, we're looking at about a $90,000 additional tax revenue that's above and beyond. So even if you went to that number, if we added $80,000 in undesignated fund balance use, and the net increase is only around 90,000, we know that's going to be made up with the additional tax revenue that's coming in.
Yep.
So, you know, you go to back to the undesignated fund balance and you add 80,000.
So I'm going to go, I'm going to go right out on a limb here. We're getting a lot of things done. I mean, we've made some cuts, we've made some tweaks, and technically we probably could put everything back in. And still be at last year's numbers. I want to make sure I add that little bit in. With the things, how much different, if you were going to have a crystal ball, Bill, how much different would next year's budget be, knowing that we have taken care of some of our capital items in this budget? I mean, if I thought next year's budget would be,
It's
not
certainly going to be.
$7,000 higher again, like this one is, then that would be happy.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate that it would be, because we've added a lot of those capital items back into this. So even if we funded them at the same level, or even a little bit higher level, we're not going to see a huge jump in the budget.
All right, so let me go out on another limb, and I'm just talking aloud, board, please bear with my 20%, but if we were to leave it as presented and make some adjustments out of UFB, we're going to get a lot of stuff done, a lot of stuff funded. There's still more funding to do, but is there any feelings on that from anybody else?
And before I say any more, I wanted to ask Megan. She pulled up the debt service payments for projects that will be completed under the capital side, which is important to note, so that we can.
Yeah.
If she sees something that I'm not anticipating.
No, I was just referencing this because he wanted to know projected capital investment for next year. We're over $100,000 more for next year for projects that we pushed out, because obviously they can't all be done in 1 year. So you have some projects in here that it would be the first time that they're on here, which equates to over $100,000 more.
Which is not a big number when you're looking at, a net budget of 4.2 million.
I mean, I'd even talked to Megan a while ago about even something as simple as paying off our streetlights, what we owe on them. So we'll automatically go into a $14,000 bill instead of a $55,000 bill, or whatever that number is. And paying off our solar that's on the roof, so we can start seeing an automatic benefit from it. I mean, it's only like a year or two left on it, but anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
I think that I'd be happy with going ahead and approving the harbor cameras at this point, and then leaving the other cuts that we made intact.
I could certainly support that.
I just want to make sure before I leave this that you guys wanted the 380 from the unassigned fund balance.
So when this budget goes to bed, will we know Carrie's numbers
No,
prior to printing?
no.
See, that's the hard part. I mean, I know we know it's coming, and we can tell people we're anticipating it, and it will be there, but we can't count them until we have them in our hand.
Yeah, I mean, there's just too much work to do there. So
I'd take whatever we need to make us whole, and if we end up getting stuff, that Carrie figures out later on in the budget process, it'll go into undesignated fund balance at the end of the year.
Well, but it doesn't really work like that. I mean, because if he comes up with additional value, then what will end up happening is that the mill rate will just decrease. Because the budget will have already been approved at that point.
All right.
So I would, you know, what I'm looking at it, what I'm saying is if the board uses the additional 80,000 to go to 380,000 for unassigned fund balance, then and that leaves about $90,000. This budget's about $90,000 over the current year net. Then that about makes up what we're expecting for the increased value. If we use more undesignated fund balance, then we're hurting ourselves for next year as well, because then we don't have that to tap into when we do know we have some anticipated funding coming in.
Right. But
You
hopefully a lot, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You also don't have to necessarily make your final decision tonight. This budget will go to the budget committee the week after next. And then if in that time frame or even before your meeting that following Monday, you decide that something needs to change, you still have the opportunity to change that.
Correct.
It-
March 22nd is when the board does your final votes.
Is there a chance, Bill, that you might speak to the chair of the budget committee and explain some of the stuff that we're privy to, or is that even possible?
Not possible at this point.
Okay, yep, good.
But there will
But
be a lot of,
Deborah's earlier point, what do you think about putting the 15,000 back in on the cameras for the harbor? We do that?
Yeah, I'm okay putting the camera. I think
support
that's
that.
important. That's important. Showcase what we've got as well as protect it.
Especially if we can get revenue from those poachers.
Right.
So I'll go add that in, but what do you want me to do about this unassigned fund balance number?
Just keep it the way it is right now.
Keep it for now.
At 300,000?
No,
380.
No, 380.
Okay.
80, and we'll
Yeah.
adjust it as more information comes in.
And then you'll have the feedback too from the budget committee as well, because they're going to be reviewing
Right.
your budget. So you'll have that feedback. So can you go back to the budget summary, Megan, please? So with the cameras back in there, you're at 104,000, which is 2.5%, I can't read it. My eyes are,
2.52.
2.52.
thank you. Let's see if it was a 3 or a 5. Which really is a low number. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, some significant investment in the town and
yes,
Yep, absolutely.
and Bill, I know some of the things were left over from last year, and I forget what they were, whether it's building of avenues and cemeteries, or if there were some things that were left over. We'll do our darndest to get everything, all these little projects done in the upcoming budget year and not have to carry anything over or.
Trying our best.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but it'll just mean for another busy year, and busy's good.
Remind me what we did on assessment. Did we reduce that or not? I know we flagged it.
We did not.
We did not reduce it?
You mean for Caitlin's time?
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing was changed.
Okay. I'm happy with that.
And I would like to, Bill, really explore that, training our own person as we did with our other assistant. And unfortunately, they chose to go elsewhere, but it's incentive for them to stay here longer, perhaps. And when I say the other person left, they didn't leave for the same type of
No,
profession.
I understand what you're saying, Mark.
Yeah.
It's just that there's so much work that has to be done and, it's-
Well, it was with the other person too. So, and
Right.
they were eventually going to be taking on that responsibility that we're paying for elsewhere now. So,
and I understand what you're saying. Keep in mind that other areas suffered, which is why we've made some adjustments there. So,
Okay, are we good? Bill, what else do we need to do? We're just doing consensus stuff here. We don't.
just
vote.
doing consensus stuff. So if there's consensus from the board on the changes that you've made to the budget tonight and to send it on to the budget committee, everyone's good with that.
and that's a 2.52. Is that what I see there, Megan?
Yeah.
Or that's,
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is for the changes that you made, I will type them up in an email and send them to you. But if you could individually reply to me if you have any changes in the descriptions, that will go in the backup material.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, I think we're good.
fine job, guys. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
great job.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night. Thank you.